The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started in about 1 or 2 minutes, so hang tight and we'll see you shortly. You're just joining us. Welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon. We're going to get started in less than a minute. All right, let's go ahead and begin. So again, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on today's webinar, How to Unscramble Your Grant Management Process. My name is Nicole Jones, and I'm the Marketing Director here at Kintone. Kintone's a no-code platform for building custom applications and workflows to seamlessly share information, files, and data with your team. Our speakers, Kintone nonprofit lead Tim Eddingfield and CASA Coos County nonprofit program director Greg Dalton, are going to share how Kintone makes it easy for nonprofits to simplify their grant management process, especially for teams with multiple grant writers. So Greg's going to showcase why and how he uses Kintone to manage his grant writing and reporting process, and how switching to Kintone cut his grant application time in half. But before we get there, we're going to go over a little bit of housekeeping. So you're probably listening using your computer speaker system, but if you'd like to join over the phone, you can just select telephone in the audio pane and that dial-in information will pop up. And if you have questions at any point during today's webinar, you can ask them by typing them into the questions pane of the control panel. We'll collect those and we will answer them during our Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. All right, so before I hand it over to Tim and Greg, we're going to take a quick poll here. So on average, how many grants do you forget to apply for? 1 to 2, 3 to 5, or simply too many? All right, looks like we've still got a couple more people voting. So far, 50% 1 to 2, 17% said 3 to 5, and 33% said too many. So there we go. Greg and Tim, looks like we got a mix of poll results here.
This is Greg. That looks, yeah, about right. I have a really good story with that. That when I took over the job as director for CASA here in Coos County, we didn't really have an application for tracking grants, and so I was going through these stacks of papers and file cabinet, and I found this grant that we had received 4 or 5 years previous, and was like, why haven't we been applying for this? And by reconnecting with that grantor, we were able to bring in an extra $10,000 to our program, and they've been a regular funder since. So it just goes to show you, without a way to organize and collect your grants so you can see them all in one place, you could be missing out.
That's incredible. I mean, literally money hiding in your file cabinet.
Yes.
Well, sure glad you found that. And I'm really glad that you're here, that you've joined us, Greg Dalton. You've done some really fantastic work in Kintone to make your grant management process a lot more efficient. And joining us is also Tim Eddingfield. He's our Kintone NPO community leader, and he will be here just to answer a lot of any technical questions you might have and fill in any gaps. But at this point, I really just want to give the stage to Greg to show us what he's built. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Greg.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Welcome, everybody. I'm Greg Dalton. I am the program director for CASA of Coos County. I've been in this job for a couple years now. And one of the things I noticed right away when I came in and started to look at grants, which was a whole different field for me, is that there was no one platform that everybody was using to collect and track grant information. And to me, that was very scary, especially as a new director taking on that new role. And so I needed something. So I started looking around what is available to nonprofits that's affordable. Couldn't really find anything at that point. So I knew Access. So I built a Microsoft Access database. One of the disadvantages of that was they're really hard to share and network so your teams can all look at that. And one of the things I should mention is our program is part of we're under the umbrella of Oregon Coast Community Action. So we have a development department that does a lot of the grants. Some of our program directors, like myself, also do grants. So it's important to have a platform that we can all see and use and keep the information in one place. Here at Orca, we had information spread out on spreadsheets, individual computers. It was all over the place. So when you needed information, you had to contact a bunch of different people to try to find it. And that's just no way to effectively manage grants. So at some point, about a year ago, I was talking to Tim, and he had mentioned Kintone, and I thought, that might be something that works for us. So we started working together, and I provided him that Access database that I had, and which he very effectively pulled over into Kintone and created this app that we're going to run through today. And since then we've modified it, and as growing needs and working with our other programs to find out what they need, and so we've developed this app that works across multiple programs for us. And one of the things we discovered right away was because we deal with multiple partnerships, it was probably better to create what we call a partnership app, and I'll show that to you right now. Everybody can see my screen okay, correct?
Looks good, Greg.
Okay. So this is our partnership app, and I'm not going to go through this. I'm just going to say that when we start a connection with a partner, whether that be a funder, a foundation, we create a partnership address or contact list for them, and that's this right here. And then when we create a grant from one of those partners, we create the grant, and we link that partner to the grant. So we add the people first, and then the places would be our grants, our things. And that's just a lot easier way to manage your grants, because you can have a partner that provides multiple grants to multiple programs, and so you don't want to keep duplicating that. And so that works really well for us. And another real quick, other app that we created for document storage. It's just real simple looking. And this just keeps all our, the stuff I use for writing grants, whether it be our board list, our strategic plan, our 990. And so it's at my fingertips wherever I go. And so wherever I have internet in the world, I can manage grants, write grants, attach documents, etc. Okay, so now I'll move on to, let's see, go to my CASA grants. See, I've got a filter on this, so I can just filter by program and look at just the grants for my program. And we're going to look at the Coquille Tribal Fund. They have been a long supporter of our program, and we've got a real long history of them giving to us. So I thought that was a really good grant to look at. So I'm going to start in from the top and just go through each piece of the grant, and we'll talk about you know, why it's there. Some of it's pretty self-explanatory. So first we start off as who owns the grant, and this was important for us because we have multiple grant managers, and I'm going to open this in edit field so I can show you more of this. And so right now you've got myself right here, and then Sarah Stevens, who is our development director. I like to link Sarah to each grant because she oversees everything. If another program owns this grant, we may put that program director or whoever's managing that. And this updates from our users in the system. And then the next part is our department selection. So if you have multiple programs or organizational departments that receive separate funding grants, you can assign grants accordingly. And by typing in the program, I think we have South Coast Food Share, we have energy, housing, we have all kinds of different programs at ORCA. So this one's assigned to us. And then later on, if I want to filter and show only grants that we own, I can create that filter and then just show the list. And so it's just a good way to organize. Next field we use is the Allocation Code. This I created for finance. When we spend down funds, this is the code we use to let our finance department know to take funds out of this grant. And it's just a good way to keep that organized as well. Okay. So our funder contact information, this is the information that comes from that partnership database. And you can see kind of these grayed out areas. That's auto-filled. Once I start typing in a fund here, let me see if we could look up here. Oops. Sometimes it depends on how I spell. See, I have Coquille Tribal Fund here, so, and I'm not going to save any of this. So this pulls that that partner from our partnership database, and if I was to select it, we'll go ahead and look up and select it because then it autofills all their primary contact, phone numbers, mailing address, zip code, all that stuff. And that's why it's important to have that link between the two. And the next is our grant size. Depending on what your organization does, we can filter by, say, if we need $100,000 for a project, we can go in and run a filter and sort the funders that give that type of money, especially if you're managing hundreds of funds or hundreds of grants. It's really nice to be able to filter them out and say, these are those that we can go to get those grants. Checking my notes here really quick. Subaward funder. We have several grants that we get at state level. Being a nonprofit, Oregon CASA Network is our state organization. So sometimes big funders like the Ford Family Foundation will give us a state award, and then the Oregon CASA Network, for instance, will subaward that to individual programs. So that's what that is. This would be In that case, this would be Oregon CASA Network up here as our funding agent. Our sub-award funder would be the Ford Family Foundation. So the next section is our actual grant information. This part is basically what is the grant and what are the numbers. We have several we've tracked, and I've worked really close with some of our other program departments to find what they needed. For CASA, we use grants pretty much for this. Some of our other programs track donations, in-kind donations, volunteer information, volunteer hours, service, government, and this is just depending on your needs. You can create this, modify this however you want. We track the ask amount. What did we ask for? What did they give us? And that's good for historic record of what generally works. The spending period is for our, for my knowledge, and also for our finance department, so they can see when we get the funds, when we have to spend them out. So our grant cycle information, this is auto-filled again from that partnership. When we put a funding agent in, we will determine how many grant cycles they have out throughout the year. Some have one. As you can see here, for some of our programs, they have 6. And then you can select which grant cycle that this grant is for. Pretty simple, but it auto-fills from that partnership database. Okay. So this next section basically dates for a current year. If you send in a letter of interest, we're kind of in that transition here this year, so we haven't filled in this, we haven't worked with this funder yet, so we haven't sent an LOI yet. That'll be filled in as we do. Ask due date, this is the date that we have to have that ask in. And this is really good because you can build yourself a report that shows you all your ask dates, and that way it'll clue you to when you've got to get that stuff out. The date sent, this is good for everybody, that they know that, hey, this has been sent, especially if you have multiple people managing your grants. Whoever comes in here shows them that story that that's been sent in. Announcement due, this is really good for being able to track when those grants are coming in. If my announcement was due on the 8th of January and it's February 8th, maybe I'm going to reach out to that funder and find out, hey, you know, what's the process, what's going on. And down here is just a note pane I've added here for individual notes. Any communication I may have had, that nothing that I really need to keep historically, but just to let everybody know what's going on, just in case. We have other areas for tracking timeline notes and stuff down below. We'll go through that. Okay. So the grant reporting timeline, this is where we fill in depending on what kind of reports are due for that grant. Those wonderful reports we all love to do that are so fun and engaging. Here we see we had a final report due on September, and the final report was sent early in August and copied to accounting. Is my way, because I was basically using this app by myself at first, to let me know that I emailed that report to our accounting department so they could keep that in their file, which was probably a paper file. Since then, we've got more of our team on board, and at some point, once they're all in here, they'll be able to see that and have access, but we're working on that. Ultimately, this type of app, once everybody's using it, saves you time of having to send that communication back and forth, notifying each member, because they'll have it right here. Okay, so note section, basically this is historical reference of notes. This was the last one here. This is Mike Lehman. He's our CEO for Oregon Coast Community Action, and I just put in a note here that he had let me know that they received a call about the grant awards. And there's just historic timeline of notes, so everybody's on the same page. And so one of the next sections here is the awards. And as I was stated earlier, that Coquille Tribe has given to CASA a lot throughout the years. And so this is just a way to track all those different awards that they've given. Okay. Almost to the last section here, blank grant forms. I don't have one in here yet. A lot of times we like to keep, especially for like our local, like our city agencies that give the smaller funds, because a lot of times their grant forms don't change over the years, and you can just keep a blank in here to work on every year. So I thought it was really important for some of the grants we manage. Not all of them. Coquille is online. A lot of our bigger funders are now online, so they don't have a blank in here. But yeah, like our smaller ones, City, Zonta has been a good funder for us throughout the years. I would keep a blank in here, just in case we need to alter or work on it. One of the last sections, and this is a section that we are working on, and I've worked with my Kintone team to kind of address what was looking kind of clunky to me and to improve, and they're really good about that. So these are historical grant documents. The old way of tracking was with having each of these sections and then dragging all the documents into here, and it actually was taking up a lot of space. So what we did is we created a table, listed our fiscal year, and then we can keep our forms. And that way, if I need to look at or work on an award letter, or not award letter, but a grant application among teams, I can keep the updated one in there, and whoever else works on it next can pull it off there, edit it, and put it back. And also, we have a historical record of what we wrote the grant for, and then when we do our reports, to be able to report out on our success and outcomes on that grant. And so that is the very simplistic but very useful grant tracking app, and what we've done to it and how it's been effective for us so far. And so that wraps up my presentation, and I will hand it back to Nicole.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Greg. I'm going to share my screen again here. That was an awesome walkthrough. So with that, I'm sure there are questions to answer. So we're going to start our Q&A portion of the webinar. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. So I'll just give you a few moments here to formulate those questions. All right, first question here. Will we have access to this grant app in Kintone?
And I'll take that answer. So hi, I'm Tim. I'm the nonprofit community lead. And just so you know, in the chat box and in the email that you receive after this webinar completes will be a link to a video and the download file for this exact application template. Everything you saw Greg do today, you will be able to do the moment you download this application. And you will need a Kintone subdomain to use it. So if you do not already have a Kintone free trial or a subdomain, you will need to do that before you can access it.
That's right. And yep, as Tim mentioned, those links are included in the chat box here. So starting with the Kintone nonprofit free trial, and then the template. So for both the grant management partnership apps is a second link there. The third link is a video just to help walk you through how to get it plugged into Kintone. Super simple. And then the last part the last link rather, is a calendar for Tim's calendar if you need to schedule anything and you need to get walked through some additional details. That's what that's there for. And yep, that'll be all included in the follow-up emails for sure. Excellent. Let's see. Next question here. Ooh, great question. How did you get your entire team to buy into this and using this new platform? And how big is your team? And did you roll people in incrementally or launch it all at once?
I can take this one. So I needed it for me, and the price was cheap enough for me. So I thought, well, at the very least, I'm going to use it to manage my grant. When I talked to our food share director, she immediately also saw the benefits to being able to use it for not just grants, but she's using it for volunteer tracking through her pantries that she has throughout our counties. And so with Laura's buying in on it and helping to develop a lot of that stuff, it was really easy to get our two programs. And we used it for a year. And just recently, we met with our leadership team for ORCA and showed them what we were doing with the grant and how it's been effective in different, even project management and creating our own apps. And I mean, they were excited about it. We could actually show, because yes, it is another app. It's another database. Folks can be very reluctant to add another tool to manage their daily tasks. And what we were able to do is show that the grant tracking app, the partnership app, filled a gap for us that those other apps, those other databases we were using were not doing. And they were gaps. They were very important activities that we needed to do as an organization. So after we were able to show that gap, it was a good sell. And we've actually bought more users and implemented some other tools, being able to, I don't want to say sell it to the rest of our team, but show them how effective it's been for us for the last year.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for that great question. All right, next question here. Do the due dates and timelines populate a calendar? Tim, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. So within Kintone, calendar of views and everything is able to be set up, but you need specific type of fields to be able to populate those views. So if you have a calendar or a date field set up in your application, you can essentially make it be a calendar view. The next piece too, so just because we didn't touch on it in the presentation, but you can create a reminder system or notification system within your Kintone application to automatically notify the owner of the grant or the department that is related to the grant that a due date is approaching. So that way you can stay on top of it without having to access let's say a report or a view, but it just automatically tells you, hey, this grant is due in a week or 2 weeks. Did you get it done? The other piece too is if you've already completed the grant and you've already indicated that you've sent in the ask, you can also set the notification to disable itself based on criteria of the sent field. And that's something that we can talk about during a one-on-one or an onboarding meeting.
Right on. All right. And just a reminder, you can still ask questions. Next question here. What kind of integrations does Kintone offer?
All right. I can answer that one. So the type of integrations that Kintone has to offer is vast and various. Kintone is an open API program. So essentially it can connect to anything with an open API. In tech speak, that just means if you are working with a third-party program that is willing and able to connect with others, it will. We usually use Zapier for open API connections. So if you are, let's say, connecting to Google Calendar or Gmail or Google Sheets, I'm using a lot of Google. But if you are connecting to MailChimp or Constant Contact, things with an open API source, you can essentially say, when a record is created in my application, something else needs to happen in these programs, or vice versa. Let's say you receive an email from Gmail and you want it to go into Kintone. You can set that up yourself within Zapier as well. The possibilities are endless in terms of integrations, and they continue to grow even to this day.
Fantastic. Yeah, please, Greg, chime in.
Nicole, working with Tim and Kintone, Tim has been, because he's kind of our rep here, very helpful when I had a question. I'm really super happy with the support we get and the communication. It's almost immediate when you ask a question and need some help, that you folks have been able to get back to us and show us. I mean, there's been a few times that Tim probably can't come to all your offices, but he's poked in here and I said, hey, Tim, I have this problem, and he's fixed it in 2 seconds for me.
Thank you for saying that, Greg. Yeah, we're lucky to have Tim, and we definitely pride ourselves on problem solving and just working in the nonprofit community too. We take our mission of making teamwork better very seriously, and particularly in organizations that are contributing a lot of good to the both environment and to social issues. So thank you for all your work in the community as well, Greg. All right. Well, with that, that's all the time we've got for questions. Of course, if you have any more questions, I've got my email up here, but you can also reach out to Tim. That will be included in a follow-up email, both email addresses and also the meeting link if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one with Tim, in addition to the other links to get you up and running as quickly as possible in Kintone for grant management. So with that, just want to also remind everyone it's just a perfect time now. If you don't already have a Kintone trial, to try one out. It's free and it's full feature, and you can start building grant management and tons of other nonprofit apps that your team needs to work better together. And as I said earlier, just to get you up and running even quicker, we're sharing with each of you a grant management and a partnership template, just like what Greg used today. So it's really just plug and play. And Tim's created a video to show you how easy it is to start using it in Kintone. And just last reminder, but can't emphasize it enough because that's what we're here to do, but we're here to help you along the way. So if there's any roadblocks you run into or any just best practices you'd like to learn, feel free to schedule a meeting with Tim, and his meeting link is also in the chat box and will be included in that follow-up. All right. With that, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.